created a little bit of doubt and a little bit of confusion in PriceLabs. As I said on the first day, my background and what I do with PriceLabs, I work with a lot of large customers that have a lot of very specific strategies they do and do a lot of different implementations and things like that. So there's a whole lot that PriceLabs can do, but what we're going to get back today is the basics, and you don't need to do that stuff. What we need to do is make sure we've got those 5 first steps correct, and as long as we've got those 5, you all are good to go. So let's give it just a few more minutes, and as we said with yesterday, or the past 2 days, if you have any questions, please put those in the Q&A. If you have anything you want to chat with, or if you want to chat with some of the other people that are here, please use chat. We're going to try to cover some stuff for about 20 minutes. I'm going to give you some time back today. We don't want to go past 2:30, 2:35 today. So we're going to go ahead and get started now. All right, give me one moment. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So as I said, today, our focus is going to be on getting back to those basics. Day one, we talked about what you needed to have set up. I know yesterday I mentioned some things about the customizations and all that, but after looking at feedback and really thinking about how I was presenting to you all, I think I was creating doubt that's just not necessary. When you're starting with PriceLabs, all you really need to do is make sure you get those 5 basic steps right. And then as an automation tool, it's going to start getting you the bookings that you need. As you get further with PriceLabs, you can always look in deeper if you want to. But just so that we know everybody's on the same page, I don't want to give anybody advice that could create confusion. So today, what we're going to do is look at what a good account setup looks like. So question number 1 for today is, what does that good account setting look, or what does that good setup look like? I don't have the little indicators over here, but if you're new with PriceLabs, you'll have a little checklist that says, hey, let's make sure we get these 5 things. We talked about them on Monday. The 5 things that we need are our base price, our minimum price, when we get into our listings, our minimum stay settings, need to make sure that we are syncing as well. So we've got this to go through. Let's take a look again at the base price, and we want to make sure that we have that base price refined perfectly. The base price is going to be everything that drives it. As long as you pick a good base price, you're going to get the results that you want. So let's take a look again at how to help me choose a base price. You can come in here. If you're just coming in, let's say you're connected and you already have rates, you will have the rates will have a calculation for you when you come in. Right now, what you can see, I have a recommendation because I've been getting bookings and things like that. This is where, as you continually monitor PriceLabs, where you want to pay attention and make sure that you're looking about every 2 weeks or so. Maybe you need to tweak your base price just ever so slightly, but you don't need to be involved too much. When we're talking about this market-based and selecting your base price, let's say what you're wanting to do is achieve 100% occupancy. The easiest way for you to do that is going to be for us to go ahead and select this economy scale. That's going to put your rates to where you can really, really go and chase that occupancy. But what I would suggest is, let's go in here, let's stick with mid-scale, unless you just absolutely know you have a creme de la creme of properties. Let's go ahead and leave these. And then you can use this area to kind of refine if you want to. So maybe you don't have certain things on one side of town, or if you're closer to the beach properties, or if you're closer to the beach, maybe you go in and select just the beach properties. So with that, you want to make sure you've got your base price set up. You want to make sure you have a good minimum in there. Once again, good way to find your minimum. You want to look at your operational costs, where you feel is a healthy floor for your property. With that, let's look at question number 2. Question number 2 is, what are the biggest account setup mistakes and the red flags? Number 1 is going to be, if you don't have a base price that is set up, that's the number 1 red flag. If you're missing any of the steps on the initial setup, whether it's selecting your base price, connecting your listings, obviously going to be an issue with getting your prices in there. But let's say you don't have a base price, or you don't have a good one selected, or you just come in here and you say, hey, I want my base price to be $500 with no use of this help me choose a base price. That's a huge red flag. If you don't use minimum prices, it can be a little bit of a red flag. If you don't have your minimum stays set up, that can be as well. The other big red flag is going to be, unfortunately, what I kind of talked about on yesterday, which is using these customizations too much. All these customizations are here. I'm not going to go over these yet. If you have any interest in them, every Thursday we have what's called a 201 course. You can you can put a question in there if you want to, and we can make sure that everybody has access to that. But we don't want you to go in here and work with these customizations. There's really no reason to unless you have a massive portfolio or know why you want to go in there and kind of do these things. So a bad setup would be coming in here and changing all these, kind of turning them on and not letting the algorithm kind of drive you in the correct path. We want you to focus on getting that base price right, and then all of the little adjustments that PriceLabs will provide for you will help you refine it. So, all right. So with that, a lot of questions may come up, but the next question I've got is, well, question three is going to be, how do we adjust for high season and low season then, if all I'm doing is focusing on the base price, min price, and the minimum length of stay? And that's one of the things that PriceLabs does for you within our algorithm. So we look seasonally at what's happening. If you are in a market where it is, if let's think of a traditional ski market, you're going to be busy from, let's say, mid-December up until basically the snow goes away. PriceLabs is going to pick up on that and have a little bit of an elevation for you. Once you get out of that ski season, let's say you get into the mud season or whatever, that we're going to know that that season is a much lower one and going to kind of define that for you. We'll also be looking at demand. We've talked about that. We talked about that quite a bit on day one, but that's looking at what's coming up as compared to what happened last year. So let's take a look at some of our rates in here for the Chicago property we've been covering. You can see right now we're kind of flat across the board. If I come down here, this is one of my high demand days. You can see I'm coming up with a $319 price. And remember, if we look at this tooltip over here on the right, and we look from top to bottom, Columbus Day, October 11th, my base price is 129. Seasonally, there's nothing really going on in September. We take 1% off of that. So that brings my base price to 128. And then there's demand. We're heavily demand right now. So we're saying bring that baby up 150% for our $319 price. So that's essentially how that algorithm's going to work. You don't need to really worry about those seasons, so to speak, especially when you are getting new with PriceLabs or really getting used to it. Question four, that's a good little lead into this one, which is, how does our algorithm actually work? I did not pull up my demo deck or anything. I was just going to kind of talk about it instead of providing a visual for you. But we start with your base price, which we've talked about ad nauseum at this point. You've got the help me choose a base price tool. Then we add that seasonality. Then we add that demand factor, and then any of those customizations. So yesterday we talked about the customizations that are automatically applying for you. I'm going to cover that real quick again. So those that are automatically applying for you are the last minute price. You can see right here, this is market driven. So this is going to be different regardless of wherever you are at. If you are in Paris, France, you may have a 33 based off 32. If you are in Paris, Tennessee, it's going to be something entirely different. So this is driven based off what's happening in your market. PriceLabs is doing that work for you and adjusting it as it goes. Same with our far out pricing. That is market driven. So we're looking at what's working in your market, what the customers that are trying to book want, and how it's kind of going to impact your revenue positively, and having that in there. You also have orphan day prices, which is just that 20% discount on there, and then your occupancy based adjustments. Once those are done, the algorithm's essentially done. You come up with your price and we get you booked out. So I think that's the easiest way that I can go through and define that. All right. So I know we've got some questions coming up. Looks like we've got chat a little busy. Like I said, I do want to give you some time back today. We have some really good ideas for tomorrow and for Friday for you, but took a little too much time past few days, so we're going to give it back some. What I want us to do is look at this listing right here, the Chicago one that we've been talking about. And I have this listing, which I would call in the ideal setup. We have it with our minimum price, we have our base price, we have a minimum stay we have our minimum stay setting set in there. We have no additional customizations, just letting PriceLabs do its work and start to adjust your rates for you. And then I also have another one, which I'll pull up here in a second, that I've gone in and I have the same minimum price, the same base price, the same maximum price, but I've gone in and I've told it, hey, I think I know better than you, so I'm going to turn all these customizations on and kind of mess with it. And I want us to look and see how impactful in a negative sense turning on some of these customizations can be. When you start getting the algorithm out of its, let's say, natural state, as long as it has a good base price, it's going to work for you. If you don't have a good base price, it's probably going to have some issues. You'll get it refined. We always want to make sure that that's where you're working with that base. All right, so let me minimize this one. Oh no, don't cancel. Don't want to end the webinar for everybody. That would be bad. All right, so right now what we're looking at, mine on the left over here, this one is the good one. This is the pretty one. This is the helpful one. This is the one that's going to make me lots of money. You can see I've got a bunch of bookings in here because I'm letting it run in its natural state. This one over here, I have put a bunch of different customizations on, and basically I've said like, hey, I think this stuff will make it work better, but really what I've done is make it drastically worse. So let's look at apples to apples a little bit, and let's get off there. So right here for our 21st, for the day of the 21st, in the right state that I've got it in, I've got a $97 rate. Here I have a $50 rate. That $50 rate is because I've come in here and I've said, hey, forget what you see in the market, even though that's what's actually happening right now. I came in and I wanted to do something different. So I set a different last minute price. Now look at my rates. I'm at 50 bucks here. As we get further out, remember, I'm not going to go over these customizations, but I've put a bunch of them on. So I've turned on some pricing adjustments for the days. I've put on some minimum far out prices. I've put on a different weekend day. I've turned off far out prices. This is kind of meant to confuse a little bit. So what we've done, let's go look at October now. September, I still got $50 rates here, man. That's terrible. I go look at my September over here. Sorry, they're not kind of parallel, but I'll try to get it in there for you. So now if I'm looking at my September, I've got 112 here. My crummy listing, I've got $61. So you can tell I've made a big mistake there. I go look in October. Okay, so I've got 200 bucks here. That looks to be a pretty solid rate in the market. But because I've intervened on this one, I've told it, hey, jack things up for me. Now I'm trying to get $413. I'm probably not going to get that. I may have just missed my booking window completely. So basically what we're getting at is the more you customize it yourself without really knowing what you're doing and without getting proper approval on setting that up, you could set yourself up to fail. Very, very much so. So let's keep in mind, looking over here, what we want are these grays. We want to see a key for checking in. We want to see somebody taking a 10-night stay. We want to see a key checking in. We want to see somebody taking an 11-night stay. We don't want to see really, really high rates because I've gotten in there and turned something on that doesn't need to be turned on. And the worst part about when you go in and you turn on a bunch of customizations and things like that, you may forget that you've done it. You may forget where it's at, and it becomes something that you have to really unravel that can hurt you. So with that said, let's stick to the basics. Stick with those 5 to start off. 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, if you feel like you're really good with PriceLabs and you've got a firm understanding, maybe dive into the customizations then. But what we want you to do for this masterclass is really focus on those 5. Make sure you get your base prices dialed in. You're focused on those recommendations there and then kind of tweaking. We did have one other thing that was brought up yesterday. We got an email about, I confused somebody a little bit when it came to me talking about how the minimum stay profile could be set up and things like that. So I'm going to go back to just our good listing. And over here, I covered this slightly. For your minimum stay profiles, you do have the option of getting suggestions. So if you want something, like if you go onto Airbnb right now and you set your minimum length of stay, you just tell it like, I want it to be 1 night or I want it to be 2 nights. But let's say you want something a little more sophisticated. You don't even have to come in here and build it out. All you've got to do is come hit this little light bulb under stay restrictions, and it's going to give you suggestions. So I'm going to do confirm short term, go. Now it has given me these suggestions. Let's say I want to change it around a little bit. All I've got to do is hit apply and customize. and then I can move things around if I need to. So if I don't want to accept a one night stay, I like what it's suggesting, but I don't want a one night stay. All I've got to do is come in there and change that one to a two if I wanted to, and then you could delete that as well. So keep in mind, you do have that recommendation. It's kind of a little bit of an engine for you that will be able to tell you when you may want to change things and based off of the market. So we've got that. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to Miss Karishma, and we're going to make sure that we kind of get everything covered in a really tangible way for you, so that you all walk away from this master class with as much knowledge as you can. I do want to cover this neighborhood data area because I think it's super important for you. I'm going to spend the next 4 minutes or so just kind of looking at this. We're not going to spend a ton of time in here. Hopefully, I can get to it a little bit more tomorrow, but there's a lot of valuable data in here. If you're somebody that doesn't like graphs, sometimes it can be a little too much. I understand. So if you look at this and you just kind of go, feel free to kind of gloss over for a few minutes. I'll bring you back in 20 or in 10 minutes. We do have AI insights though. So if this graph is not good for you, you can come in here and say, let me click AI insights. Now you're going to get a little bit of an analysis of what this graph is saying. So if you wanted to, you could come in and look at that. I would recommend coming into neighborhood data, kind of looking around. You don't want to change things or anything like that. Just look around, see if you can gather some good information. With this, you're looking at your pricing versus the market. With this one, and keep in mind, we're going to go in a little bit more depth, hopefully a little bit later. But this one, we're going to be looking at the occupancy trends in your market. This is market history. This can be really, really good information for you. So looking at your overall broad market, this is about where we see our occupancy landing overall for the course of a year. And then you can see we break it down by month as well for historical dates. You want to look at your booking windows and see that kind of information. It's here. Length of stay is here as well if you want to see if there's any types of trends. This is really good information for you, but don't overanalyze anything right now. You don't have to do this. It's just if you like being a little bit more hands-on with data, you have this at your disposal too. This part is a part that no matter what, I think everybody should eventually start using. This is our competitor map. So you can come in here. Once again, it's that same area we looked at in Chicago. I can come in here. If I wanted to, I can click on any of these little dots. So I could click on that if I wanted to and actually see if the property is. Then you have down below our map, wish that would stop popping up on me. You have the competitor calendar. So in here, everything is based off of the proximity closest to you. So I could come in and let's say I know that's one of my competitors I want to look at. I know vintage two bedrooms, one of the competitors I always look at. I love that garden studio. It's one of mine that I'm going to look at. And I know this one is, these are some of those properties that I've just been looking at. I can come in, select those, hit update data, and now I have their rate calendar. I get to see what their cleaning fee is, and I get to see how their fee structure is set up as well. This is invaluable information as you're kind of going in. If you are looking at competitors, if you don't do this right now, don't worry about hopping in there. Eventually, later on in your pricing journey, you'll get into where you're looking at competitors, but this can be extremely valuable to you. Just below that, you kind of see the breakdown of our market overview. Once again, don't need to pay too much attention to this area or the minimum stay settings if you want to. This would be a place where I would really get in there. And if you have some competitors that you've been looking at, maybe doing a manual search on Airbnb, this is the best place for you to kind of go select those, and then they're going to stay there so you can see them later. Okay. Well, we have covered the 20 minutes and what we wanted to cover, and I did it in 19, so that's good. We've saved a little time. The rest of the time today, we're going to do some questions. So if you have a question on anything we've covered over the past few days, please put that in the Q&A now, and I will start answering questions shortly. All right. So let's get started. David has asked, can you set up a one night stay price where it's increased 20% if it books 30 days before? That is a very specific rule to try to incorporate. Depending on your property management system, depending on who you're connecting with, That is a possibility. It's only with a few property management systems. It's what we call length of stay pricing. It's not something we would cover in this masterclass. But if you want to shoot an email to support and let them know which property management system or connection you are using, and we'll see if length of stay is available for you. All right. Ricardo has asked how to differentiate seasonal factor sensitivity for different periods in the year. That is something that is possible with PriceLabs. It's one of those plethora of customizations that we have that's typically used for a larger property manager. So it is not even something that is directly accessible to everybody. If you think that that's something that would benefit you and you want to try it out, you could reach out to support and ask them to unlock pricing profiles for you. I would not suggest turning those on right now, Ricardo, unless you're really, really advanced in your revenue management. I would say stick with those basics. And then as you start understanding a little bit more and seeing how the algorithm works, then maybe that would be something that you could look at. It is something we offer. It's not something I would suggest unless you are a very, very, very savvy user of PriceLabs. All right. Let's see. Karen says, what should I do if my September weekend show on PriceLabs is good demand, but at this point it may be last minute for bookings? Should I reduce the price or let it ride? I have a large property in the North Georgia mountains. Miss Karen, I'm very familiar with the area. I'm assuming we're talking about the Blue Ridge kind of area, which is absolutely gorgeous. That is it's going to be up to you, so to speak. You can go in if you want to and do a date specific override and say, hey, let's bring that down a little bit if you feel comfortable doing that. I would not necessarily suggest it. I would say let PriceLabs do its thing. If you get to where it's a day or two out, maybe go in there and do a manual override. But for the most part, I would say let it ride. Oh. All right. Mariano says, I'm in Buenos Aires and don't have any events marked in the calendar all year. Is that okay? That does not sound like what you should be seeing. So, Mr. Mariano, if you don't mind, please reach out to support at pricelabs.co. Let them know what your account number is or the email address that your account's on and have somebody look at that because that does not sound correct. Thank you, Miss Glinda. Do appreciate you. Pascal says, I understand that my minimum price is the rock bottom price. I can't go under. So basically, my cost of owning the property plus my minimum profit. If I take my annual expenses for a property, what occupancy should I expect to book to divide the annual cost by? Should I divide my expenses plus minimum profit by 365 days, 180 days? It's a really good question. That is well above what I think we would be covering in this class. Yes, same for you, Ashley. If you don't see any events, please reach out to support at pricelabs.co. Um, it's kind of, I can't give you a very specific answer. I would say most likely I would look at both of them. I would say do your expenses plus your minimum profit divided by 365, and then do it by 180 also. And then, without knowing more about your business, kind of hard for me to say, but I would use both of those metrics and then probably going to be somewhere in between for you. All right. Scott says, simple question. Are we better off with the recommended base price or the market-based one? In my case, the recommended one seems to follow my most recent base price that I've set without much movement for demand and occupancy. Right now, my recommended base price is $650, 82% of the market, and the market-based for similar properties is $547, 75% of the market. Without knowing all of the details in it, I'm generally going to say stick with your recommended. And the reason for that is, let's say your price is at 650 right now, then that's 650 with a recommendation. If PriceLabs thought you needed to be closer to that 547, it would drop a little bit more drastically. So I would say stick with the recommended price if that is available to you. Now, if you're brand new with PriceLabs, obviously you're going to kind of start with that market based. But after you make that market-based selection, I would go with recommended from there. Right. Vlad says, I don't have the stars on my listing. Where can I activate the event stars to show me which events are in my region? Southern France in the Provence Village. That is a good question, Vlad. I will hop in and show you that. So let's say you are in PriceLabs and you don't have those fancy red star or the pink stars that I have over here, and you want to see them, come over to your listing. Up here in the corner, you've got these three dots. If you click those three dots, you have a couple of other options, one of which is notes. So if you want to leave a note field, you can. But all you got to do is turn on show events right here, and that will populate those for you. And that is nice and easy there. Stop sharing here. Da, da, da. Let's see. Uh, Judy, if you don't mind, I think you have a great question. I think it's a little bit too advanced for the masterclass right now, so we're going to answer that via email to you, okay? GH says, for the book nights, can you see the actual book price instead of PriceLab's recommended price since they are already booked and set in stone? That's a really good question, GH, and I think that's something that we do intend on showing. It's a matter of how to visually pull it off. Right now, it's hard to get the exact book inform like if a date is booked for 200 and then the next date's booked for 250, the way we retrieve the information from Airbnb, Verbo, or from property management systems is we get the whole amount. So instead of it being $200 on one day, 250 on one day, we would show the ADR is 225. So the combined divided by two. Within the software, though, like that first price that you see, we leave that showing just in case you end up with a cancellation, so that that price will then become active for you. So we're still pricing your property even though it's booked, just in case somebody cancels it and you end up having it pop up available. That's the main reason we don't show the actual book price there. All right. Ben asks, how do PriceLab's tool for setting nightly rates differ from Beyond? I think the easiest way to say that is PriceLab's tools are a little bit more up to date. They follow the market trends that we've seen over the past 2 or 3 years. I think Beyond has become a little stagnant with what they do. They focus a lot on the historical accurate or the historical reservations and things like that. They are nowhere near as good at projecting ahead of time and picking up on demand before as well. Also think that the cost of it is just a total it makes it not worth it. But yeah. All right. Karen says, what do you think about the market-driven customization for far out prices in advanced customization? I would stick with market-driven 100% until you become somebody that's just a super, super savvy revenue manager that understands kind of how each of these move. To me, it is the correct way to go. Now, once again, if you're a little bit more savvy, maybe you want to dial it in a little bit so that you can target certain things. And that's a great thing about PriceLabs. If you are savvy and you want to do that, you can customize it that way, but you don't need to. If you don't customize it, it's still going to perform well for you. Let's see. I noticed my minimum stays in Airbnb had multiple choices chosen, i.e., 3 days and 5 day minimums applied. Sorry, Dr. Kent, I don't see a question on that, so I'm not 100% sure how to answer, but if you have a question, go ahead and hit it back with us. Da, da, da. Vladon says, could you please quantify what low, normal, good, and high demand is? I covered that a little bit yesterday when we were talking about the colors on the calendar. Low means that compared to the dates around it. So if you have a Monday and it's light blue saying that it's low, that is going to be the lowest demand date of dates that are similar to it. So the Mondays that are around it. Normal is going to be, normal demand. We see kind of what's happening over time. Good is going to say, hey, this one's just a little bit better, but it's not the highest demand day, so to speak. So high is going to indicate this is the highest demand day. This is going to be where you're able to make the majority of your money. That's a lot of, gotcha. Tanea says, my A-frame is situated about 25 miles from the hotels in our closest city. How do I get the info for those hotels in my hotel data? I think I'm too far away for them to pull for me. Anytime you have something like that, if you think it's a possibility, like, hey, could I potentially do this? reach out to support. If it's something that we can accommodate, they will absolutely try to. I think that's something that they could probably do for you. Not 100% sure on that answer, but I think they could be able to like hop out and say, let's pick these for you. All right. Shannon says, why is the competitor calendar distance shown as only kilometers? As a resident of the United States, I understand why this question comes up, but unfortunately, the rest of the globe is on the metric system, so that's kind of why we are a global product. I personally have requested, hey, could we maybe specify it a little bit, if we're looking in this 4 miles or whatever. Um, but that is why it is kilometers. Hopefully, we'll get it over to miles at some point for folks in the US if they want it as well. All right, I'm going to answer a few more, and any questions that I don't get to, we will send a response via email. So let's see. You got Monica. I manage 2 large properties, and there are only 6 comps in my area. Those are fun markets. Um, they are established, and so are their prices. Their prices are much higher and get more bookings than I do. Is there a percent change with base rate that you recommend to get traction? Without being able to see it, it's really hard for me to give that recommendation. What I would say in your situation, especially with large properties, if you have a question like that, I'm not just trying to kick the bucket down. I'm really trying to let you all know that you have a great support staff at PriceLabs that is going to be able to help you out. So please reach out to support at pricelabs.co if you have any of these types of questions. You're going to get the answer very, very quickly. So don't hesitate to ask our team. They'll be more than happy to help you. All right. Did you say that you can save that view under neighborhood competitors so that you can come back and view those same competitors each time you go to that screen? That is correct, Adrian. Once you go in there and you select your competitors in that competitor calendar set, they will stay there until you change them, take them out. All right, I'm going to hit one more. I'm so sorry if I'm skipping over yours. How do you get the competitive info you just went over? Paul asked. So the reason or the way that we get that is the same way that we get all the information that helps us drive the pricing. And that's by scraping the data from Airbnb and from Vrbo. We have access to being able to see calendars on those. So if we know, like, let's say I have a property and it shows is available from July 1st to July 31st. And then tomorrow it shows that I'm not available July 1st through July 10th, we can basically imply, hey, this thing has been picked off. It was probably picked off at that rate. The one thing that we cannot find out yet on the competitor calendar is what their discounts may be. So like we don't know if it has a weekly discount or a monthly discount applied to it. Hopefully in the next couple of months, though, that is something they will have worked out. Folks, thank you all so much for your time today. I apologize if I didn't get to any of the questions. I was a little, and by a little, I'm like 30 minutes overboard on each of the last 2 days. So thank you all. If you have any other questions, please shoot them to us. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and we are going to have some awesome fun time. So thank you all. Bye-bye.